My mother-in-law accidentally destroyed all my Christmas presents for the kids. When I found the shredded wrapping paper in her trash, she said, "Oh well, accidents happen." I smiled and said, "You're absolutely right. They do." The next morning, she woke up to the most unforgettable Christmas of her life. I should have known something was wrong the moment Patricia answered the door on Christmas Eve with that particular smile she reserves for moments when she's about to ruin my day. It wasn't her normal, fake, pleasant expression. This was different. This was the smile of someone who had just won a game I didn't even know we were playing. "Sarah, David, kids, come in," she said, ushering us through the front door of the house where my husband grew up. I've been so excited for tonight. My 3 kids, Emma, 8, Jake, 6, and little Sophie, 4, ran past her toward the living room where the massive Christmas tree stood, already surrounded by an impressive pile of presents. All from Patricia, of course. She'd made sure to mention multiple times over the past month how much she'd spent on the grandchildren this year. I followed with the large bag containing the gifts I'd spent months saving for and carefully wrapping. Nothing extravagant. We weren't wealthy, but thoughtful presents I knew each child would love. Emma's art supplies, Jake's Lego set, Sophie's dollhouse accessories. Each gift represented hours of overtime work and careful budgeting. "Where should I put these?" I asked, hefting the bag. "Oh, just set them anywhere," Patricia said dismissively. "There's so much under the tree already." David was already deep in conversation with his father about work, completely oblivious to the undercurrent of tension I could feel radiating from his mother. He'd never been good at reading Patricia's moods, which is probably why it took him 34 years to realize she didn't actually like me. The evening started normally enough. Patricia had prepared her usual elaborate Christmas Eve dinner: prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, fresh rolls, 3 different desserts. She was an excellent cook. I had to give her that. It was one of the few things about her I genuinely appreciate, but throughout dinner, I kept catching her looking at me with that same secretive smile, like she knew something I didn't, like she was counting down to some private joke that was about to be revealed. "The kids seem excited about tomorrow," she said as we cleared the table. "I hope they're not too disappointed if some of their presents don't work out." I paused in the middle of stacking plates. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing specific. Just that sometimes Christmas morning doesn't go exactly as planned, you know." A cold feeling settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. Patricia was difficult, but she wasn't cruel. She wouldn't actually do anything to hurt the kids' Christmas, would she? After dinner, the kids opened their traditional Christmas Eve gift, new pajamas, and we settled in for the evening. Patricia brought out hot chocolate and Christmas cookies, and for a few hours, everything felt almost normal. The kids played with their new toys from earlier in the month. David and his father watched football, and Patricia and I maintained our usual polite but distant conversation. Around 9 o'clock, we started the bedtime routine. The kids were practically vibrating with excitement about Christmas morning, asking repeatedly if they could just open one present early. "Just one tiny one, please." "Santa doesn't come until you're asleep," I reminded them. The same thing my own mother had told me every Christmas Eve of my childhood. "But Grandma Patricia's presents are already here," Emma pointed out logically. "Can't we open those?" "Christmas morning," Patricia said firmly. "All presents get opened Christmas morning. That's the rule." As I tucked each child into their makeshift beds in the guest room, air mattresses and sleeping bags, since Patricia's house didn't actually have space for all of us, despite her insistence that we stay overnight, I felt that same nagging worry from dinner. Something was off. Patricia was being too nice? Too secretive? I couldn't put my finger on it, but my maternal instincts were screaming that trouble was coming. I was right. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of rustling paper coming from downstairs. Soft, careful sounds, like someone trying not to be heard. David was dead asleep beside me, snoring softly, completely unaware. I slipped out of bed and crept to the top of the stairs, listening. More rustling. The distinct sound of tape being pulled off paper. The crinkle of wrapping being moved around. My blood turned to ice. I tiptoed down the stairs, avoiding the steps I knew creaked from childhood visits, and peered around the corner into the living room. Patricia was kneeling beside the Christmas tree in her bathrobe, methodically unwrapping presents. Not her presents. mine. She had the bag I'd brought open beside her, and she was carefully removing the wrapping paper from each gift, examining the contents. And then she was destroying them. I watched in horror as she took Emma's new art set, $40 I'd saved by skipping lunch for 2 weeks, and deliberately dumped all the markers and colored pencils into a bowl of water she'd brought from the kitchen. The expensive watercolor paints dissolved into a muddy mess. Jake's Lego set was next. She opened the box and systematically snapped the pieces into tiny fragments, making sure each piece was too small to be useful. The instructions she tore into confetti. Sophie's dollhouse furniture, delicate little pieces I'd found at a specialty toy store and paid for with my emergency credit card. She crushed under her feet, grinding them into the hardwood floor until they were unrecognizable splinters. I stood there frozen, watching my mother-in-law systematically destroy 3 months of careful saving and planning, 3 months of working extra shifts and cutting corners on groceries, 3 months of excitement about seeing my children's faces on Christmas morning. When she was done, she carefully gathered all the destroyed items and the shredded wrapping paper into a garbage bag. Then she rearranged her own presents under the tree, making sure they completely filled the space where mine had been. She stood up, brushed off her bathrobe, and turned toward the stairs. That's when she saw me. For a moment, we stared at each other across the living room. Her with the garbage bag full of my children's ruined Christmas presents in her hands. Me with the absolute certainty that I was looking at a woman who had just declared war on my family. "Oh," she said quietly. "You're awake. What did you just do?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. "I'm not sure what you mean, Patricia. What did you just do?" She lifted her chin, that same secretive smile spreading across her face. "I cleaned up some things that were inappropriate. You destroyed my children's Christmas presents. I disposed of some items that weren't suitable for Christmas morning. They were perfectly suitable. They were beautiful, thoughtful gifts that I spent months saving for." She shrugged. "Well, accidents happen. And really, Sarah, the children have so many lovely presents from me. They won't even notice." The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't an accident or a moment of poor judgment. This was calculated. This was a woman who had looked at her grandchildren's Christmas presents and decided to destroy them. Out of what? Spite? Control? Some twisted need to be the only gift giver in their lives? "You're going to tell them the truth," I said quietly. "I'm not going to tell them anything. There's nothing to tell. Patricia, you are going to march upstairs right now, wake up my children, and explain to them why their Christmas presents from their mother have been destroyed." "No, I'm not. And if you try to cause a scene tomorrow morning, I'll make sure David knows exactly how dramatic and unstable you're being. How you're trying to ruin Christmas for everyone because you're jealous of what I can provide for the grandchildren." The threat was clear. In Patricia's version of events, I would be the villain, the jealous daughter-in-law who couldn't handle her mother-in-law's generosity, the woman who started a family fight on Christmas morning over imaginary slights. She had it all planned out. "Get some sleep," she said sweetly, hefting the garbage bag. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day." She walked past me toward the kitchen, where I heard the garbage disposal, grinding up the evidence of what she'd done. I stood in that living room for a long time, staring at the tree surrounded only by Patricia's presents, feeling something cold and deadly settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something more dangerous than anger. Clarity. Patricia thought she had won. She thought she had successfully eliminated the competition for Christmas morning, eliminated any threat to her position as the supreme gift giver and beloved grandmother. She thought I would be too embarrassed, too desperate to keep the peace, to call her out. She was wrong. I went back upstairs, but I didn't go back to bed. Instead, I got dressed, grabbed my purse and car keys, and slipped out of the house. Christmas morning starts early when you're planning the perfect revenge. The 24-hour Walmart was surprisingly busy for 4 a.m. on Christmas Day. Apparently, I wasn't the only person who'd had a Christmas emergency that required immediate attention. The difference was that my emergency was entirely self-created. I had 4 hours before the kids would wake up. 4 hours to completely rewrite Christmas morning. I started in the toy section, buying duplicates of everything Patricia had destroyed. Better versions, actually. The deluxe art set instead of the basic one. The larger Lego set instead of the smaller one. The complete dollhouse furniture collection instead of just the few pieces I'd originally bought. But that was just the beginning. I also bought presents for David. Things I knew he wanted but had never mentioned to his mother. A new leather jacket, wireless headphones, that cookbook he'd been eyeing online. Expensive things that would make it very clear that Santa had been very, very good to Daddy this year. And then I bought presents for Patricia. Not nice presents. I found the clearance section and selected the most ridiculous, inappropriate, insulting gifts I could find. A hideous Christmas sweater, covered in cartoon cats. A self-help book titled How to Stop Being a Toxic Person. A gift certificate for anger management classes. A cookbook called Humble Pie, recipes for people who need to eat crow. Each gift I wrapped in the most beautiful, expensive wrapping paper I could find. Silk ribbons, elegant bows, little gift cards with thoughtful messages like, I thought this was perfect for you. And this reminded me so much of you. I was back at Patricia's house by 7 a.m. while everyone was still asleep. I arranged all the new presents under the tree, making sure my children's gifts were prominently displayed. Patricia's special presents I placed strategically where she couldn't miss them. Then, I went into the kitchen and started making Christmas breakfast. Patricia's traditional Christmas morning menu, but elevated. Fresh orange juice instead of frozen. Real maple syrup instead of the fake stuff. Bacon from the expensive butcher shop instead of the grocery store brand. I was humming Christmas carols when Patricia came downstairs at 8 a.m. She stopped dead when she saw the presents under the tree. What? She started. Good morning, I said brightly from the kitchen. Merry Christmas. I hope you slept well. She walked slowly toward the tree, staring at the pile of beautifully wrapped gifts that definitely hadn't been there when she went to bed. Where did these come from? Santa, I think. You know how he is. Sometimes he makes late deliveries. Sarah, what did you do? I made Christmas breakfast. I hope you're hungry. The kids thundered down the stairs then, full of Christmas morning energy and excitement. They fell on the presents like tiny pajama-wearing piranhas. And for the next hour, the living room was full of shrieks of joy and mountains of wrapping paper. Emma loved her art supplies even more than I'd hoped. Jake immediately started building with his new Legos. Sophie arranged her dollhouse furniture with the concentration of a tiny interior design. David was genuinely surprised by his gifts, since he'd had no idea I was planning to buy him anything so extravagant. He kept asking where I'd gotten the money, but I just smiled and said I'd been saving. And then it was Patricia's turn. Oh, Grandma, Patricia, Emma called out. Santa brought you presents too. Patricia approached her gifts like they might explode. She unwrapped the first one, the ugly cat sweater, with the careful movements of someone defusing a bomb. It's very colorful, she said weakly. The self-help book was next. She read the title out loud, her voice getting smaller with each word. How to Stop Being a Toxic Person. I thought that looked interesting, I said innocently. Sometimes it's good to work on personal growth, don't you think? The anger management gift certificate was the final straw. Patricia's face went bright red as she read it, and I could see her hands shaking. Sarah, David said, looking confused. These are joke gifts, right? Oh no, I said seriously. I put a lot of thought into each one. I really think they're perfect for Patricia. Patricia started, then stopped. Because what could she say? That the gifts were insulting? That they were inappropriate? That they were clearly chosen to humiliate her? All of which was true, but saying so would require explaining why she deserved to be humiliated, and that would mean admitting what she'd done to my children's presents. Thank you, she said finally, the words sounding like they were being pulled out of her with pliers. They're very thoughtful. I'm so glad you like them. I was worried you might think they were inappropriate or something. The rest of Christmas morning passed in a strange, tense silence. The kids played with their toys. David tried on his new jacket, and Patricia sat in her chair clutching her humiliating gifts like evidence of her own crimes. Finally, around noon, she cornered me in the kitchen while David was outside with the kids. You know what you did, she said quietly. I gave you some lovely Christmas presents. Sarah, this has to stop. What has to stop? You can't keep playing these games. I turned to face her fully, abandoning all pretense of Christmas cheer. Patricia, let me be very clear about something. You destroyed my children's Christmas presents. You looked at gifts I saved for months to buy, gifts I wrapped with love and excitement, and you deliberately destroyed them because you couldn't stand the idea of them being happy about something that didn't come from you. That's not. You ground their toys under your feet. You dissolved their art supplies in water. You turned their Christmas morning into your personal power play. Her face was white now. So yes, I'm playing games. I'm playing the same game you started at 3 a.m. when you decided to wage war on a 4-year-old's dollhouse furniture. Those gifts were unnecessary. The children have everything they need. The children have everything you think they need. But what they need most is to know that their mother loves them, enough to work extra shifts and save every penny to buy them something special. What they need is to know that Christmas isn't just about how much money someone has to spend. I provide for them. You provide for them conditionally. Your love comes with strings attached. Your gifts come with the expectation that they'll love you more than they love their own parents. Patricia stared at me for a long moment. This isn't over, she said finally. I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a nice smile. Patricia, it is so over. Because here's what's going to happen next. You're going to go out there and tell David exactly what you did last night. You're going to explain how you destroyed our children's Christmas presents and tried to manipulate the situation to make me look bad. I'm not going to do that. Yes, you are, because if you don't, I'm going to tell him myself. And I'm going to show him the photos I took of my destroyed gifts in your garbage this morning before the trash truck came. Her face went ashen. You didn't? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Photo after photo of Emma's dissolved art supplies, Jake's broken Legos, Sophie's crushed dollhouse furniture, all clearly visible in Patricia's kitchen garbage. Timestamp shows 4:17 a.m., I said helpfully. Hard to explain away, don't you think? You manipulative little... I'm manipulative, Patricia? You destroyed Christmas presents. For children. Your own grandchildren. There is no universe in which you are the victim here. She stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to stop. I want you to stop competing with me for my children's affection. I want you to stop trying to undermine my role as their mother. I want you to stop treating my family like pawns in whatever twisted game you're playing with your own insecurities. And if I don't, then David sees these photos. Your son finds out exactly what kind of person his mother really is. And we find somewhere else to spend Christmas next year. The threat landed exactly the way I'd intended. Patricia's relationship with David was the most important thing in her world. The idea of losing access to him, to the grandchildren, was her worst nightmare. Fine, she said quietly. Fine. I'll try to do better. You'll do more than try. You'll succeed. Because, Patricia, I promise you this. If you ever do anything like this again, those photos won't just go to David. They'll go to everyone. Your church friends, your neighbors, your book club. Everyone will know exactly what you did on Christmas Eve. She nodded, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. Good. Now go enjoy your Christmas presents. I really think that anger management class will be helpful. The rest of the day passed quietly. Patricia barely spoke, just sat in her chair looking shell-shocked while the kids played and David enjoyed his new gifts. When we left that evening, she hugged the children goodbye but couldn't quite meet my eyes. In the car, David asked if everything was okay. Everything's perfect, I said. I think Patricia and I finally understand each other. And we did. She understood that I wasn't the pushover daughter-in-law she thought I was. And I understood that sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to become a bigger, smarter bully. The next Christmas, Patricia bought the kids thoughtful, age-appropriate gifts and didn't say a word when they were equally excited about the presents from me. She complimented my wrapping paper and asked where I'd gotten such a lovely idea for Jake's gift. She also started therapy, though she never directly mentioned it. I just noticed that her behavior became less controlling, less competitive. She started asking about my work, my interests, my opinions on things that had nothing to do with the children. It wasn't a magic transformation. She was still Patricia, still opinionated, still a little self-centered, still occasionally boundary crossing. But she was no longer actively trying to sabotage my relationship with my own children. Sometimes people don't change because they want to. Sometimes they change because the alternative is losing everything they care about. And sometimes the best Christmas present you can give yourself is the knowledge that you don't have to accept toxic behavior just because it comes wrapped in family obligation. Patricia learned that Christmas morning that there are consequences for trying to destroy other people's joy. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is refuse to let anyone, even family, teach them that cruelty is acceptable. Did I go too far with my revenge, or was Patricia's behavior unforgivable? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell.